होला पेजलाई फलो गरी सबैले लाइक
really effective, whether it's Sampokami or Karan KC. And Lamashani getting in the wickets early, I think, is a really good sign for Nepal. I mean, it just does his confidence a world of good. And especially to get rid of Andy Umeed. This could be close. Direct hit, I reckon Barrington would have had to look at the umpire quite brazenly. You see, Barrington was quick to get off, but this is the pressure that Nepal provides. This is how good their fielding is and how tight they've been bowling. Haven't given away too many bad balls, even Gulshan Jap. This is twice now in a couple of overs where we've seen near run-out chances not being affected due to direct hit. But yeah, you'd reckon that Nepal would be very happy with the way they've started things off and that they want to get rid of this partnership as early as they can, just because if you let Barrington and Jones continue, two very fluid cricketers that can really set up the game.
Yeah, really like watching these two bat, I have to say. Jones is stylish. Barrington is just so effective and gritty and gutsy. I suspect that one of those Nepal Premier League teams is going to be in the market for Scotland's captain. We've seen Herod Erasmus already be picked up. Lots of associates there, isn't it? It's kind of almost, it's not quite an associate Premier League, but there's kind of shades of that. And I think that's going to be a real celebration. They're calling it the Festival of the Himalayas. It starts in 31 days from now. Slashed away over the head of even Dipender Singh Iree. Look at the fans up there who thought that maybe Iree was going to produce something outrageous. It belonged in the American Airlines Centre like a basketballer. He almost seemed to hang in the air, but it was well over his head. It's a good stroke for four.
I'll talk about hang time from Dipender Singh Iree. It's not a great delivery from Gulshan Jha, short, wide. He's the only man on the field, Iree, that could have made that a possible chance, but Richie Barrington taking advantage of a real loose delivery. And this is what he's done again. He's battled through, like you said. He's very gutsy, but what he can do is he can take advantage of the bad ones. When it was short, has to be pulled. He did that, short and wide, got on to the back foot and just steered it over the top. He's playing good cricket right now, Barrington.
Cut away again, but there's protection out there. Yeah, it is interesting. We spoke about that joint world record that Nepal had with using 9 bowlers.
He's 8 in his 1 over in the ODIs, but I just think it's his kind of a day. It's gloomy, it's overcast. Get his brother up to the stumps. It might nibble about a bit. He'll have to bowl more accurately than he has, but I just suspect he could be a good option. No Raj Banshee, so you don't have that control in the team today. 6 from that over. It is 57 for 3. The Nepal fans always coming in with good colour. They're probably bit chilly down there, I suspect. It's not overly warm. Let's get to some of these messages. Ferrante is asking, is the pitch sticky because of the overcast condition? I'm assuming that the wind will remove any moisture and it will make it better for batting in the second innings.
Yeah, wouldn't be, and the wind would be getting rid of some of that moisture. In Texas here in Grand Prairie, we tend to get a lot of dew overnight, especially with the rainfall we had yesterday. Pitch would have been covered, but yeah, there would be a little bit of moisture early. It does dissipate very quickly, and without the sun, the wind would be the main driver of that force. And yeah, we anticipate it to get better with just some of that grass popping off for the second innings.
Cut away, and maybe a hand might save the second as Mala backs up Anil Kumar Sai, who's at backward point. Yeah, you barely think you're in the same country as 2 days ago, would you? It's chilly, windy, nothing but glorious sunshine since we've come into Texas. What was that, about 10 days ago for the, actually more, 2 weeks ago now for the T20s. who else would you expect with the ball? At some point, maybe that they'll wait for someone like a left-hander, Mark Watt, to get in for Depinder Singh Ari.
Yeah, you reckon he would come in very late in the innings? I would have thought, and I'm with you, that Arif Sheikh would have been the next pacer amongst the bunch, not Gulshan Jah, because this is the kind of situation that would suit him, and especially with two members who are just getting new to the middle. I thought once Lamashane took a wicket, it would have been right on time to bring in an Arif Sheikh who can just get a little nip around, and there's Monty Desai on the screen. Trying to keep warm, I reckon, with some of that wind coming in, and again, he's got a lot on his plate here, trying to get his side back into their winning ways.
I admire Monty Desai hugely. He's a humble man. He is, I think the impact he's had on this team since he's come in, he's rightly been idolised across Nepal for it. You see him there, barefoot, very humble. He does his yoga in the morning. He always gets some exercises in during the match. There's the googly. Oh, now, if there's no bat involved, on the back foot, this is so close. We don't have the stump mics in play, so I'm not sure whether there was bat involved. Maybe the replay will tell us. Ended this the 18th at 60 for 3. Could this have been the 4th wicket?
It looked very close on live viewing. Again, the big question is their bat, because he's come across his stumps. The googly hasn't picked it. Yeah, there is. Little bit of bat. That's all the difference. Really well done. Really well judged. We've talked about the umpiring being very good. But how good was that delivery there? I know you as a leggy would have a soft spot for a googly that snuck back through.
Well, I'll tell you something. That is a great decision from Vijaya Mallela. Outstanding piece of umpiring, because if it hasn't hit that inside edge, that is salmon trout, which means out. You ever heard of Cockney rhyming slang? Probably you're too young to even know what that means.
You're just speaking a foreign language.
Yeah, it's a really weird thing. It's something in England. I don't know why it goes around some of the cricket clubs in Ireland as well. You get one more piece of evidence of the inside edge. Yeah, this would have been very much without the inside edge. Salmon trout. So Cockney rhyming slang, it's originated in England. You're in essence, you translate it from something that rhymes with the thing that you're trying to say, and I don't know how you decode it. It was like and things like, so, oh, you've got to answer your dog and bone, which is your phone.
Okay, yeah.
It's really silly, actually, to be honest. But yeah, there's one that we used to always go around the cricket grounds. I played a couple of seasons at the Hampshire County Cricket Club in England. I was on their academy and played some second 11 games and stuff when I was younger as a leg spinner. And you would get, because you so much time, you spend so much time, particularly in those county second 11 games. You used to play 3-day matches, so there's just so much time sitting around talking nonsense with your teammates. I was there with Chris Tremlett and James Tomlinson, these kind of guys, and they would teach me Cockney rhyming slang. And yeah, salmon trout was the one when you were appealing for one of the umpires. How's he not giving that, mate? That's salmon trout. I had no idea as a young Irish kid, one of the few Irish kids over at English County Cricket. It's the likes of Ryan Eagleson and Ed Joyce that started to blaze the trail for us. That's a good diving stop. Really fine effort by Kushal Bertel. He dropped a tough catch the other day, didn't he? If that had been held, Nepal might have won that game.
Again, speaks to standards that Nepal hold themselves to in the field. You can see it. And he's probably saved a couple of runs, if not 4. That was going very, very quickly. It's a sharp dive out to his right. The thing for me is that he's disappointed he didn't get it cleanly to pick up and throw. Again, it's the standards in which Monty Desai, this entire Nepal side, hold themselves to in the field that set them apart amongst the rest. Why it's so surprising to see them ever miss field for a delivery to get through, which it can only be described as a wall in the inner ring.
Yeah, so maybe if you're watching on and you've got your favourite examples of Cockney rhyming slang, particularly if there's some cricket relevance to them, message those. Use the hashtag CWCL2 at Cricket Badge directly. I'm trying to think of other one. I think there's a little graph of like the most famous ones that I might be able to pull up for you here, Aman. That will hopefully you kind of get the concept.
Yes, I understand. But why is it 2 words versus just the 1 word?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just adds to the creativity factor, I reckon.
Yeah, and some of them don't really make a huge amount of sense. Yeah, and some of them are really, and it's not just, it's always more than one word, it is. I suppose that helps your sausage and mash, your cash.
I saw Uncle Bert for shirt. That's quite brilliant. That one's. I think that might be the most creative of the bunch.
I've never, there's a cricket one, I've never heard that one before. Oh, you've got a bit of a Darren Goff, mate. A cough. You've never heard of this before today?
No, this is the first time. 100%.
Yeah, this one beats the outside edge. 19 ball, 61 for 3. Yeah, mince pies. That's definitely one I've heard before.
I've heard that. Okay.
Pies.
Yeah. I've heard that one.
She's got beautiful mince pies. It's like, I don't know. It's ridiculous. It's probably one of those things that originated somewhere and just kind of spread out there. Whistle and flute. That's a very famous one. God, he's got a great whistle and flute. That lad is suit.
There you go. That one I understand. It's almost the classiness of a whistle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get that one. I'm still not over Uncle Bert and shirt. That's don't know how they've come up with that one.
Yeah, so Cockney it's in the East End of London. And when did it begin? Mid-19th century. It was a code by which either criminals confused the police or salesmen compared notes with each other beyond the understanding of their customers. There you go.
There you go. A sales tactic. See, now I understand it. There you go. That makes sense.
That is fascinating.
So how much did Uncle Bert go for? And you're like, who sold Uncle Bert?
That is one I used to hear around. My first season was at in Hampshire, Northlands Road, which is the old ground, the original ground. My second season was at the Rose Bowl, the new ground, which you'd know well from the internationals. We used to hear that from the slips when the batter kept playing it missing. Right, see if you can guess it without looking. You'd say, "Oh, this batter, he hasn't a Scooby-Doo."
Hasn't a clue.
Hasn't a clue.
There you go.
You see, so they kind of make sense.
They do.
Arnie Shake into the attack, and this is a move that I actually thought would be a good one. I'm not sure they brought him on from this end. I thought he should have bowled from the pavilion end with the ball just shaping away. So Sandy Plamachani's overs will be held back. I'm sure they would have said that about me when I was batting. Oh, this Lenny, this Irishman hasn't a Scooby-Doo. I wouldn't have known what they meant. Was it? So that sledge wouldn't have worked. Explained to you, I think, during the T20s how my journey with Monty Desai's come full circle, having done my level 3 coaching course with him in Scotland. A relationship has gone full circle with too as well is Steve Snell. I played with him in Hampshire down in the Ventnor Cricket Club. We're actually on the Isle of Wight, our cricket club that I got allocated out to. He went on to play with Hampshire and indeed Somerset, maybe Gloucester, where he was also then became academy coach and then director of cricket. He's now the Scottish director of cricket for Cricket Scotland. He's moved up there, doing a really good job, and he's just messaged me, "Lenny, you need to check your mince pies, mate." Your eyes. So yeah, good old Cockney rhymes. I'm glad I've introduced that to you.
No, this is
it's madness, really.
I might be saying it to some of my American friends just to confuse them now.
There you go. You've got your own little code.
There you go.
Slip in place as Arif Sheikh is just kind of nipping it about. Can Karen KC cut off the second? He will. So we're into the 20th. Scotland only going at 3 and over here. Let's get to some of these other questions. Oh yeah, Sean McPartland messaging on. What about a Michelle? Do you know what a Michelle means?
Michelle. No, is it cricket related?
Cricket related. A Michelle Pfeiffer.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
He's on a Michelle, mate.
Yeah,
so when you got 4 down, he's on a Michelle.
I was thinking something that rhymed, but that was great.
I'm not sure if that's definitely Cockney rhyming slang, but certainly in the vicinity. Shane also following up on the previous topic, are there too many T20 leagues now? Would it be better if there was windows for each format? I think one of the problems with that, Shane, is getting the consensus from all of the different people who run the game, and it's not just the individual nations' boards, and there's obviously plenty of those, it's the ICC themselves, but then within each of the countries, a lot of these leagues can be privately funded or privately owned, certainly the teams anyway. So difficult to control, whilst in theory probably a good idea. Will we move towards a position where there's a mandated window for test cricket to try and keep the prestige and the pinnacle nature of that? That's possible, but I think outside of that might be tough.
Yeah, I don't, just because of, again, you're playing in every hemisphere of the world, every time zone. There's so many different seasons you have to come into play with, and 20th over goes 64 for 3. Yeah, I think the Test cricket window makes sense because you can see that there's a real effort to keep the prestige there with the Test Championship that's come into play over the last couple of years, and then just trying to make sure that you get the very best cricketers in the world continuing to play red ball cricket. It's a very important thing. We all still love red ball cricket, so I think that's the window you can carve. The T20s in particular, just typically you see so many leagues roughly around the same time, right? You have maybe a month separating MLC and CPL that could honestly overlap at certain times if you really needed it to.
It's
Just
almost
because
like
of seasons.
It's almost like there's a couple of different windows, isn't there? It's kind of a jam-packed summer when they can't play in the subcontinent because of the monsoons. So you've got your kind of CPL, MLC, 100 in England, all sort of jostling, GT20 up in Canada, all sort of jostling for their own little space. And then kind of outside of the monsoons, you've got your kind of January, February, March, BPL, PSL.
The Big Bash.
Can't remember. I think the Lanka Premier League's round then.
Yeah.
Some point as well. Then you've got your Big Bash at the same time, your SA20, because that's their summer down in South Africa and Australia. They're going to dash a quick single here. I think it's well placed because it's miles in front of Dipender Singhari. Just back to the red ball cricket. Good question coming in here from Dari on Twitter. He says, at Cricket Badge, we know associate teams don't have the right to play test cricket, but do you think teams like Nepal, Netherlands, Scotland, Namibia should start playing 3 or 4 day cricket to try and improve themselves and compete against the top teams in ODIs and T20s? Yes, in theory. The sad thing is everything in the modern games comes down to the financials. The associates don't get nearly as much money as I think they deserve, given how well they perform. So they have to use that limited resource that they have wisely. And as a consequence, the ICC Intercontinental Cup, which was the first-class 4-day cup played out amongst the leading associates, has gone by the wayside as a consequence of both kind of a lack of will from those involved in the ICC to spend the amount of money that was needed on it, and also COVID coming at the wrong time. It's just never got back up. Most countries, I think, particularly Nepal and indeed Scotland in particular, have said that they would love to do it if they could. Again, it just comes down to that squeeze calendar. They're playing 36 ODIs every 2.5 years now, with T20 stapled onto almost every tour. That in the previous times, in the 2010s when the I Cup was on, the 2000s, they didn't have that scale of games. So I just don't know where you fit it in the calendar. In principle, yes, but from a cost perspective, because it's obviously not going to be a money maker, you're not going to get the fans in that you would need for it to be equitable. So in principle, yes, but will it happen? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Again, it's how far can you stretch the dollars that you're given, and with the scale of games that you're playing. And I think the big thing that's come into associate cricket is that every game has now started to add context in terms of how they qualify for matches against full member nations in the World Cup. And I think you want to continue down that trend. You want them to be able to have those events. And
the reality is, Aman, to build on that, if you look at the white ball cycles for these nations now, the 50 over, the premier competition in the world, is once every 4 years. And the thing I love is the T20 World Cup is back to once every 2 years, and more importantly, it's an open draw 20-team competition. Who knows, that might go to 24 in the next cycle in years to come. So with 3 World Cups in every 4 years and 14 teams now at the 50 over World Cup, particularly these two sides we're watching here, Scotland and Nepal, have realistic ambitions of being at every one of those 3 World Cups every 4 years.
Exactly.
So that has to be the focus.
Right. And again, you want to give your resources to where there's context, where there's opportunities to expand your market as well. You're going to get the most eyeballs at those World Cups. Biggest opportunities to really make a name for yourself. Nepal would have come away from that World Cup. You talk about Ian Bishop at times. You said one of his moments of the tournament was watching Nepal play, watching the crowds for Nepal here in Texas. And so it's a 21st over comes 66 for 3. You want more eyes on you, and the way that comes is playing in these bigger World Cups against the top level of competition, and the multi-day games, a 3 or 4 day where you won't see any of these full members and the same eyeballs won't come your way. Probably not where your dollar's best suited.
Yeah, and it's kind of almost a return on investment thing.
Yeah.
I hate thinking about sport purely as a business, but the reality is, the modern reality, all sports are now businesses, and many decisions are not necessarily made for sporting reasons. They are sometimes made for commercial reasons. You might think it's sad, but it's the reality of things. And also, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing either. It can be a good thing. You know, the revenues that Nepal can generate from their upcoming Nepal Premier League can help grow the game in other ways. The next question coming from Pravakar Bartula, who's watching. Listen to this, Aman. From Tasmania in Australia. It's 3:45 a.m. I'm watching from the home of Ricky Ponting, he says. He says, just a question. Are you aware of how many overseas players are going to be in the one team at the Nepal Premier League? I'll answer that one for you, Aman. It's 4 in the starting 11, but there isn't a restriction. As Jones edges it and is dropped. It did go sharply to the man who can keep wicket, Anil Shah, who's in there at slip, but it's a definite chance. Because of the expansive drive that was being attempted, it went very sharply. Should this have been taken?
You reckon it should have? He didn't have to move too far. It's really just he has to go up. He has to go up to the left, and if you're sending it slip, that's what you have to take. Again, Sheikh, he's been brought in to do exactly that. Dare for the big drive. He's in position for it. You have to take that every day.
And you can see the grimace on Anil Shah's face. I thought this should have been caught. When you get your hands pointing up, you'll generally hold on to it. The problem was he was almost falling over. Look at the way in which, I'm not sure whether this reverse angle is going to show it very well, but he's crouching down. He almost falls as he's trying, rather than holding his body shape and just getting the hands up, in which case I think he would have held on. That's a big moment in the game. Jones is put down. But now, is he gone? Oh, yes, he is. And it's an excellent catch. So well judged by Rohit Paudel. It only cost 4 runs, the drop from Anil Shah, and he will almost celebrate more than anyone in that Nepal side. Jones gets a life, and then he gives it away.
Yeah, you can almost sense there was a bit of frustration coming on to Jones there. He just felt that he was looking to score runs, score him in a hurry, felt that this session had to belong to Scotland. And he picked RF Sheikh as the man he wanted to take on. He just threw all of his hands at it. This one nipped away. Got at the toe end of the bat. No real power. And Rohit Paudel has a knack of backpedaling to the ball. That's not the typical way you want to do it, but he's so quick. He gets his head in a great position. His hands are nice and high. As we see Jones have to go for just the 19 runs that he scored. Brilliantly done by Rohit Paudel. RF Sheikh, the change for him works yet again. A bowling change for Nepal results in a wicket.
Yeah, what a catch. Nepal are so good with their movement. They make catches like those look easy. Karen KC's off Shaihan Jahangir the other day. That was not an easy catch. This one for Rohit Paudel was not an easy catch, but he's so exceptional with his speed, his footwork and his judgment that he's made it look easy. He's probably backpedaled 12-15 yards there before he's taken the catch, and the move to get Arif Sheikh back, as you and I speculated about and predicted on, was a good one. Big wicket. Scotland are in real trouble here.
Yeah, they got to get some runs on the board now. Again, we talked about the first hour being big. They're still overcast in the air. It's not going to be easy to score, but you have to build a partnership, find a way to climb above 250. And even that feels like not enough. Again, we've spoken about the quality of this wicket, where there are runs on offer. It's a different day in Texas than what we've been accustomed to seeing, and those clouds don't look like they're breaking. They're actually getting a touch darker coming in from the east. The wind is blowing from east to west at the moment. Darker clouds coming above us, so it might just be here for the entirety of the things.
Oh, another one. That's been a really good 2 over Arif Sheikh, I must say, particularly given how poor the 2 overs he's bowled on this tour so far have been. Gutsy captaincy, brave captaincy, brilliant captaincy. 22 bowled, it's 70 for 4.
Quite good. Again, we answered questions before the game about Rohit Paudel as the captain, and I think it's just comes from a place of Nepal fans wanting to find wins, and not understanding why they're not finding the level of success that they feel they should be. And Rohit Paudel's done the right things. Again, it's just making winning a habit, getting into the right mindset, and you can see every change that Paudel's made today has worked, and it's worked quite brilliantly.
I'm going to give a little shout out to Tim Wigmore here. I don't think he's watching, although he's such a badger, the writer for The Telegraph. Maybe he is. Just funny that this has popped up in my feed given, I know we're trying to get to all your questions. We try to select good ones that are interesting topics. That great question from Zoe earlier about how to follow all of the different leagues that are going on. He's got a piece today on the Telegraph. You can check it out at Tim Wig on Twitter. And the headline is, how is cricket eating itself? Players earning more money by losing. That what he's referring to there is not any corruption, but that if a player's team are knocked out of a franchise league before the playoffs or the latter stages, that then they're essentially free to go and play in another league. And we saw that happen this year, and there was no claim of any wrongdoing by any player. The players are absolutely giving their all, but just, I think it was a player who was knocked out of the SAT 20 and then 24 hours later he's playing in the ILT 20 in Dubai. We forgot to mention that one when we were mentioning all the leagues going around. Some players representing 6 or 8 plus franchises a year, and even in one occasion 3 in a week. Some leagues not being sanctioned or being cancelled before a ball is bowled. All sorts going on. So look, I think it's probably now is the time of the most change for cricket. The funny thing for me within all of this is that international cricket, in some ways, you think it would be lessened by all of this. If anything, I think it's the inverse. I think there's almost more value and more prominence and more importance to the international game than ever, because it's hard to digest all of the other stuff that's happening. But when you've got a Cricket World Cup League 2 game between Nepal and Scotland, you know the context of it, you know the importance of it. When you've got a test match like that test series, India-New Zealand going on right now, how brilliant has that been? Yeah,
it's been very good. And I think because they're playing so many franchise leagues and you don't have as busy of an international calendar, it almost makes that international game feel ever more priceless, because you're like, well, we haven't had one of these in maybe 3 months because everyone's just out there playing every franchise league there is. And so now also, every time you do play, it's probably against a team that you have to beat. There's context in every match, and that's the big thing, that, okay, that's still the pinnacle, but now there's less of it, and everything means more. And I think as a viewer, that's way more interesting to watch than maybe a franchise league where you win, you lose, you don't have any connections to, that's away, it's kind of just propped up out of nowhere. You might have like one player or two, but you're not really invested with your heart and soul.
Cut away and taken. Arif Sheikh throws the ball miles into the air because he's taken a fine catch, and it's the big one. It's Richie Berrington, who's a strong cutter of the ball, but he's tried to cut that maybe a little bit too close to his body, and all he could do was pick out Arif Sheikh, who takes a wonderful low catch. Nepal, they've got 5.
I don't think Richie Berrington will look back and be too pleased with how he's gone out there. Again, it wasn't real threatening of a delivery. There's slightward movement back in off a length from Gulshan Jah, so it is coming back into Berrington. I think you're right, he's just cut too close to the body. Wasn't able to get it behind square the way he was looking to do so. You take a look, and again, it's just slightly angled in, and that's the real difference of why he couldn't get it behind square, couldn't get over the ball. And a tremendous take from Arif Sheikh. He kept the hands very low, fingers down, above the turf. Berrington has to walk away. The 5th wicket falls, 70 runs on the board, and this is exactly what Nepal wanted. Bowling first, and a long way to go now for Scotland.
Well, another great piece of captaincy. Not many would have given Gulshan Jah 6th in a row, but he felt that he had something from his teenager to continue to offer. They've not just broken the partnership, they've got both the set men in Berrington and Jones heading back to the hutch, and now the additional depth of this Scottish side will be tested as Michael Leask, who on a special day for himself, it's his birthday, a very happy birthday to Michael Leask, the Aberdeen man. One more look at the catch. It's such a good catch because it's so low and it went so quickly. It's probably only inches off the turf. Clearly carried, but that's a great effort at backward point. 34 years of age today. Heard a big round of applause in the Scottish team huddle. I thought there was a landmark, but no, it was for the birthday of Michael Leask. And he's been in these kind of positions before, having to rescue Scotland from trouble. There was also some jokes going around the camp. Oh, happy 40th, Leaskey. Giving him a bit of stick. But yeah, 34 today. He's a fine player. He was here in Texas playing in a league before this as well. He's been out here for the best part of a month. He's got a very close-knit family back home He'll be missing the birthday celebrations. I know they'll be watching on. The family who support him everywhere around the world. He's a fine player, but Scotland in real trouble. They're going to need runs from him.
It's not the birthday present he would have wanted walking into the middle. Would have to come and rebuild with Matthew Cross, who hasn't scored a run either. They're 70 for 5, needing a lot more. Again, how long do these clouds come in? As that could have been very close again to Rohit Baudo. How long do these clouds stay? And it's going to be a real thing as the 23rd over comes to an end, 71 for 5. Because if this does break apart towards the latter stage of this innings and really into the second innings, I think Nepal's going to fancy their batting. Just because, again, there's plenty of runs in the wicket. It's just what's happening with the wind, with the cover. And give a lot of credit to the bowling of Nepal. There's it's a real tall order now for Scotland. You mentioned how difficult it is to predict a score on this wicket because you reckon there's so many runs in the surface, but it's just because you have to get through that first hour. Right now, that first hour has kind of been elongated and stretched out, and Scotland are just waiting for these clouds to dissipate. I think that's really the big thing, and Nepal have been all over Scotland.
Really have. There's been some fantastic bowling changes. I know it's easy to say it when they go right, but there's been logic behind them. And there's always a bit of luck. You need a bit of luck as a captain. And you live or die in your decisions. You're the hero or the zero. A side like Nepal that are followed so fanatically and so tragically around the world by everyone. The whole country lives and thrives and rides the emotional waves of the cardiac kids. If Rohit Paudel had brought himself on to the two left-handers and got one of them out, and they'd won that game, everyone would have called it a tactical masterstroke. Instead, Harmeet Singh hit him for a couple of sixes down the ground, and then he felt it was too late to bring Kushal Bertel back. So you can be treated as a hero or a zero, depending upon how those decisions go. As this one is nearly going to get to the rope as Saiful Kami smiles as he cuts it off. 2 leg byes to the total. All you can really do is make your decision with a clear mind whilst you're out there, and there's no one better placed than the captain to kind of analyse that. Sandeep Lamachani comes over to Matthew Cross for a chat.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Again, there's always going to be speculation as to, oh, you could have done this, you should have done this. And I think for Rohit Baudo, one of the great things about him is he's going to make his moves. He'll come off the field and say, this worked, this didn't work, and it won't affect his confidence in the next couple of matches. He'll still go out there and make the changes he deems as the right moves. I think that's a real testament of how strong of a captain he is.
And someone I want to give great credit to, again, these are the things you don't see on the TV cameras or on the coverage that we can bring you. After the game, before you did the post-match presentation, Monty Desai spent about 7 or 8 minutes with Powell, miles away from the rest of the team, just down over the boundary rope, talking in depth. I don't know what was said, but the fact that the head coach has immediately recognised that despite Powell's brilliance with the bat in that game, that a lot of that match and the fact that Nepal couldn't get over the line in it kind of came down to probably Powell's decisions in the field. So immediately he went to counsel him, to talk to him, to guide him through it. And I thought it was a great piece of mentorship, and that's what he is. He's really a father figure to all these, still such a young team. Like outside of Saiful Kami and Karen KC, they really are all still kids. I know some of them have played a lot of international cricket. Dipender Singh Ari's been around a long time now too, but it's still such a young side. So I think sometimes the passionate Nepal fan base needs to give them a little bit more time and understand they're on a journey. They're not the finished article yet. They weren't the finished article last year when they won 11 from 12. There was some miraculous results, not least Padel's efforts against Scotland, when him and Karen KC pulled off a legitimate miracle at the TU ground, as Irie shows us his left-handed throwing. So they're not the finished article yet, but they really are trending in the right direction. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think the real important thing is you want to look at the way you get to your results, right? What are the building blocks you're putting down? Are you winning games based off 1 or 2 guys, or is it really you're there? You can see a culture and a community building, and then from there you have individuals who then step up. We talk about it a lot with Scotland. They have a really strong core, really strong base. So if they were to fall into a run to form, you wouldn't see them really struggle internally in the group because they're so connected, so strong. They have that base. They would just find a way to bounce back. That's what Nepal does.
End of the 24th over. 75 for 5. Got a question here in on this one, so I wanted to bring the points table up at the same time. This is from Tanaj Sapkota. He says, Andrew Dye, I'm really worried about the Nepal team to retain their ODI status. They're not in the top 4 of the league, and I think it's impossible after these matches too. I really want to know how they can keep alive their ODI status. Can you please talk about it? Of course we can, Tanaj. Thanks for getting in touch. I think it's a bit early to hit the panic button, a bit early to worry, but obviously right now the points table doesn't look great. It didn't look great with 12 games to go last year either, when they're in real chance of losing their ODI status. First, let me explain how you could lose your ODI status. If you finish 7th or 8th in this table, you're in trouble of losing your ODI status. You will travel to the playoff alongside the 5th and 6th place teams in this table, with your ODI status on the line. And if you finish beneath the sides that are coming up from the Challenge League to challenge you, the 1st and 2nd place teams in Challenge League A and Challenge League B, right now you're thinking about the likes of Kenya and Jersey and Italy, these kind of teams that are Papua New Guinea that will likely finish in the top 2 in those leagues. They'll come up and try to get their ODI status back or win it for the first time. Then you could lose your ODI status. If you finish in the top 4 in this league, you go automatically to the Cricket World Cup qualifiers. Leask stands and delivers. It's a favoured stroke of his. Ja into his 7th consecutive. Some strength being shown by him. So the top 4 go to the qualifier. That's what you want to do. You actually want to win this league. You want to show you're the best associate. Scotland and the Netherlands, maybe USA, Canada. The 4 are looking most likely to do that at the moment. But you've 2.5 years for this league. It's all the way until December 2026. So it's too early to panic. But yes, Oman, Nepal, UAE, they're in early trouble. You want to avoid the bottom 2, and you certainly, if you can't do that, you don't mind finishing 5th or 6th, but ideally you want to finish top 4. It's on driven for 4. Probably the shot of the day so far for Scotland from Michael Leask.
Yeah, I saw Andy Umeed play this a couple of times in that match against the USA, and again, this is going to be a real fight and character test for Scotland. What can they do? How do they salvage their innings? They have to take advantage of the poor deliveries. They're not coming too often, especially with Gush and Ja bowling incredibly well, I think, in the backstage of this spell. This one over-pitched just a touch and effortlessly guided down the ground, but it's going to be shots like this that carry you into a position to defend a total.
He's a fine batter, Michael Leask. What a player to have coming in at 7. He tends to counter-attack. If he does counter-attack, we could be in for some really good watching. I wonder, will they maybe turn to Lamachani to him after this? But you probably want Lamachani bowling from the other end because of the strength of that wind. No Lalit Rajbanshi today. That'd be a great option to these two. Do they maybe give Kushal Malla a twirl from this end after this Gulshan Ja over?
I don't think it's a bad idea to get Gulshan Malla in the game. Just another left arm spinner to come in and operate. I think getting the ball to turn away. I would just reckon Sandeep Lamachani is the next spinner to come in, just to continue to be aggressive while these two are fresh at the crease. If they start to find some rhythm, that's when you reckon you want to turn to maybe a Kushal Malla, maybe a Kushal Patel. But I reckon that you're going to go Sandeep Lamachani as the next spinner you bring in.
Yeah, I think he'll exclusively be used from the far end of the ground, not from the end we're watching from the pavilion end here. Because of that wind, the strength of the wind, it can't be overstated. I reckon Malla might not be a bad shout after this one. 7 in a spell's a lot for any fast bowler, particularly Ja, who's the quickest of the trio of pace bowlers. Arif Sheikh's just a little dibbly dobbler, medium pacer. This cross leaves that alone, gets us to the end of the 25th. It's the halfway stage of the first innings. Just to explain the structure once more, we're on the road to the 2027 ODI World Cup. 3 co-hosts: South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia. Namibia's first co-hosting of any World Cup. Great to see that at their new venue. South Africa and Zimbabwe qualify automatically as full member hosts. Then the next 8 sides, which will be the top 8 that aren't those 2 in the ODI rankings. As it stands, it means that the 2 full members that wouldn't get there automatically would be Ireland and the West Indies. They'll join the top 4 from this league in the Cricket World Cup qualifier, and they'll also join the 4 from the playoff, which will be 4 selected from the bottom 4 in this league and the top 2 from each of the 2 challenge leagues in an 8-team competition that will have to be played in quarter 1 of 2027. The qualifier itself probably quarter 2 2027. And it's just a fantastic structure, isn't it? The inaugural Cricket World Cup League 2 is exceptional, and this one, it's boiling up to be even better.
Yeah, again, you have more games, there's more on the line, you get more teams to push up, and I think every team is better in this league too for having played that first one, having had that experience against the highest level.
And better by a distance. They've all moved on quite, like the standard is really raised.
It's really raised. I think the US are miles more exceptional than what they were.
Now an appeal for a stumping as Lamachani comes back into the attack, but Leask says, hold on, I've kept my foot in and it's my birthday. You can't be doing that to me.
Yeah, didn't want to walk off an unhappy man. Aaron Jones would say, he had a rough birthday here at Grand Prairie.
Didn't he just before? It was his 30th birthday as well during the T20s. And then dropped for the ODI. Oh, God, feel sorry for Aaron. Big shout out to AJ if he's watching. Good move this to get Lamachani on. Googly picked by Leask. These two have played in a couple of different franchise comps before, know each other well.
Yeah, and it'll be a good battle between these two as well. Again, you've mentioned that Leask likes the counter-attack. He plays at over 100 strike rate, really in ODI cricket, so he likes to score runs, feel bad on ball. Lamachani is really bowling well. Much better lengths today. This was the first one that his line whipped away, and that's the first time that got tested. The rope gunner Casey actually does really well to get to that boundary rope. It looked like it was going to escape away, but Lamachani, today he's been very consistently on off and middle stump, and that's where he's been the most effective.
He looks in a nice rhythm today, Lamachani, doesn't he? That's got away. It beats Dipender Singh Airi. Just a bit of a drag down. Maybe the first one he hasn't got exactly where he'd like. At least he does like to play his own game. Hammers that so powerfully through the offside. 4 more.
Yeah, spotted the length and the bit of width on offer. He knew it was turning away from him, so he knew he just had the license to free his hands. And from that point, Leask was never going to miss out on that delivery. Again, Lamachani, we've mentioned his lengths have been very good today. Struggled with that against the USA. He's got to get back to being fuller.
Better zip out of the hand this time. The other one was just didn't come out properly. Question from Nikesh Dawadi. He says, at Cricket Badge, hey Lenny, quick question. Why is it so hard for wrist spinners to get their length right every time? I see them struggle with their length more than finger spinners. It's a good observation. I can speak strongly on this because I've bowled more bad balls than any wrist spinner in the history of the game. It's an incredibly difficult art. It is by far the most difficult thing you can do. Most leg spinners have a 3-finger grip as opposed to a